Hi, I'm Sean Fit for Life. I am a strength and conditioning coach, and I help people move better and perform pain-free for the rest of their lives. I created the Cold Feet podcast because I wanted to have like-minded people here with me, interview them in the cold water as they push their mental limits. So grab a hot cocoa, stay warm, and enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the Cold Feet podcast. I'm really excited about this episode because it's the first one in my new iced up freezer and the also first one where we got 2 in 1 bath. So 2 defensive players getting all tight and snuggly. Yeah. We're used to this, right? I'm privileged to be joined today by my head coach that I work with women's national flag football here in Israel. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So first, thanks for having me. My name is Lissie Sagoskin. Everyone calls me Lissie. Currently the head coach of the women's flag national team program. And I'm a personal trainer, and I'm a mom to Amichai.
All right, so we're going to delve into Amichai today, among other things. Make sure to speak up so we can hear nice and clearly. Why don't you just tell us who Amichai is to you and delve into that rabbit hole?
All right. Amichai is my son. He just turned 8 a couple weeks ago. And he's like an 8-year-old boy, but when Amichai was born, he had a stroke. We don't know exactly when. It was sometime around the time of birth. Everything was normal, not even pretty normal. He was born on time. And what happened was after he was born, a few days after, he started to turn blue. We didn't know why. At the time he was still in the hospital. As a result of him turning blue while he was still in the nursery part of the hospital, he was rushed up to the NICU for babies. And there they ran a bunch of tests on him. Couldn't really determine what was going on. And they noticed that at one point he kind of had like a movement where he was moving his hand like this, which is rare for babies. Babies have like these like uncontrollable movements because they're still developing. So they saw that and they thought that was perhaps something like a seizure. And they did an MRI. They did a ultrasound on his head, saw something on his head or in the brain. And then because of that, it's not as clear. They ordered an MRI to get a better idea. So really, after the MRI, within 5 days of his birth, we knew that he had suffered a stroke. And at that point, he was diagnosed as having cerebral palsy, CP. And the type of cerebral palsy that he has is called hemiplegic, which means that there was one side of his brain that was affected, that was injured by the stroke, and it was his right side. So the brain controls opposite sides. So his right side of the brain was injured, therefore his left side of his body was affected. And how that affects him on the ground is that he has high muscle tone on his right side. So particularly it's harder for him to use his right hand. He walks asymmetrically. He has a brace when he walks. But really, thank God, he's a high-functioning kid. He's intelligent. He speaks, he talks, he runs, he jumps. He just does everything a little bit differently. And he's a kid that works very, very hard. And I'm proud of him for that. And he has a lot of determination and motivation. But there's certainly, when that happened, and still today, there's just, it's an ongoing process and experience of lessons that I've learned.
He also joins us for practice sometimes, which is always fun.
He likes to blow the whistle.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say your biggest struggle being a parent of a special needs kid is? If there's one thing that you can pinpoint.
It's a good question because I try there are certain struggles that are there, and I think because I remain optimistic with him and positive. So to point out what the struggles are, I think it's difficult to talk about that simply because I'm so optimistic about him.
He's your son at the end of the day,
yeah. But I think the struggles that I would point are just, what I've seen him develop up until this point. He's 8, and certainly the fear and anxiety that overtook me in the beginning was, well, what's going to be? The thing with brain injuries is that we know so little about the brains, and specifically when it happens in a baby, babies' brains are still developing. It's still this ongoing process. So the question was, well, what's going to happen in the future? What will be when he's 5? So I know what he's going to be when he's 5. Well, what is he going to be when he goes into first grade? He just finished first grade he's in a inclusive, regular school where there's kids with there's a few kids with special needs, and then there's whatever we define as normal class. So now I think it's just and then what do the next few years look like? And the struggle comes of sometimes you get to days where you see, okay, it's harder for Amichai to do something, and your mind starts to wander and go to that place, and so I think that's still like an ongoing struggle of just but that's the struggle that we all face. No one knows what's going to happen in the future, so that's certainly one struggle. And then I think just as a parent, understanding, for me, I'm feeding Amichai confidence, and he's a confident kid, but I can't control the world. And my greatest hope, and I see it with his friends now and peers and people that he interacts with, is that they see him for who he is, and that's a funny, intelligent kid who's got a lot to offer. But certainly, there is an element as a parent, and I think any parent would face this, of just saying, how is he going to be accepted in the future, and how would that affect him, and how will he approach that? But I think it's a fear that any parent would face, and mine is specifically geared towards his outward differences.
What I kind of hear, as you said, is a big fear of the future, but also embracing the moment and realizing, hey, we just finished first grade. He's okay.
Yeah.
With that added twist of my son is special,
Yeah.
which is not a negative thing, so
Yeah.
I have to maybe be concerned a little bit more for him.
Yeah.
I personally grew up with an autistic brother. Now, I
Right.
know mental disability and physical disability are different worlds,
Yeah.
but the challenges are there. And I think a mistake that they make in the special education system is they kind of lump them all together. Like, oh, he's autistic. Oh, he has Down syndrome. Oh, he's in a wheelchair. Let's all put them in the same home.
Right.
And that's not fair, because everyone's functioning on different brain patterns.
Yeah.
And some people are like completely present, just have a physical disability like your son. And some people are like on the moon.
Yeah.
And kind of like in a football team, where if one person's like spacing out and not paying attention, then everyone else is going to suffer. So that's what I seen. And my journey into the special needs or special education world was growing up with Shmuel, my autistic brother. And my mom, I asked my mom when I was a kid, and I said, would you want to have a special needs child if you, it was a kid, yeah?
Yeah.
If you chose to. And she said, that's a really powerful question. Let me rephrase that. If you can go back in time, would you choose to have Shmuel, or would you want like a regular functioning child? And she actually opens every speech she makes about Shmuel with these words, where she says, my question, and then she says that God really only gives people special needs children who have the ability to do so. So that besides the fact that we're freezing our butts off in this ice bath at around 12 degrees, it says something about your character. Like the will and the drive to raise a special needs kid, or even be a sibling to a special needs kid, is very difficult. My company, funnily enough, which is called Show and Fit for Life, in Hebrew it's called Kosher Miyuchad Lekol Echad, which is special fitness for everybody. It was actually founded initially to work with special needs.
Yeah.
My drive and initiative for that started when I was working in America with the organizations like HASC and OTSAR and OHEL. And I was a counselor for these 15 kids, mostly Down syndrome and autistic. And they would send them to like the library and to like supermarkets and all these like boring like stock the shelves thing. And I said, hold up, I have this love for exercise and movement and fitness. I get these endorphins from it. I'm sure these kids, or some of them are adults, 30, 40 years old, can benefit from it as well. So I just went off itinerary. I took them to play basketball. I took them to the monkey bars. I took them to the marine park. Are you from New York?
No, but
You're not.
I'm
Take them to marine park. I take them to a marine park.
Yeah.
I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I take them to a marine park, and just we'd run laps and monkey bars, and they were so much happier. So that's really where the idea was born, that special needs or not, it's the Paralympics this past week. Every person in life can benefit from high quality movement and deserves to get the pleasure of playing sports and exercise. So that's why I'm so happy to be here today. Now, being a trainer and a mom to a special needs kid, what's your thoughts about like exercise or movement in general, specifically for your kid, or exercise and movement for general special needs population?
Right. So first of all, I agree with everything you said in terms of, you address the person first, and whatever that. I don't, there are disabilities, but there's also capabilities. So, and I think even for myself as an athlete, I know what my weaknesses are, but I know what my strengths are. So I use my disadvantages to my advantage and understand where I can, navigate that. But I think, one of the things I remember that I had when Amichai was born, I had a tremendous amount of support from my family and my friends who knew me very well. And they were, kind of just like rallied around and said, Lissie, like, you got this. Like, and I remember one of the things my father said to me was, and again, I think it's true with all parents and that your specific child that's born to you, but he said your whole life led up to this moment for this child. And everything that I learned on the field and everything that I learned on the court and my, the skills that I was able to develop in terms of work ethic and pushing through and creating a routine and understanding how my body works so I can get the best out of it. And then also being involved in sports and just the mentality of not only pushing forward but being a leader and understanding how to handle challenging situations. So that, just led me naturally to look at Amichai as, well, of course he can do anything he wants to do.
He's one of your athletes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he likes that. But of course of course he can do whatever he wants to do. He'll do it a little bit differently, but he'll find his way. And one of the things that, I know Amichai will go through as he gets older, he knows his story. He has his narrative. He knows he does things differently. But, there's a process of his own acceptance, of that and understanding his body. I can look at him, I can say, Amichai, you can do anything you want to do. And he can believe me, but he has to, I believe, he believes me, and I think, I know he believes in himself, but there's confidence that has to be developed there also. And that comes with frustration, right? That comes with frustration. It comes with failure, because we know that from ourselves also. But that's how you build. You fail at something, you get frustrated at something, and you can step back and you say, okay, how can I get better? And I hope my hope for Amichai is that he'll continue in that process also. But certainly that approach, first and foremost, of, well, it's not that you can't. The question is simply, well, why not? Of course you can. Of course you can do this.
I mean, there's a reason why you're a head coach and a pretty damn good one too, because I mean, there's many attributes that brought you to this day of, coaching Team Israel. You were a player as well, but when you deal with special needs children, especially children, they require a tremendous amount of patience, love, understanding. Sometimes you want to bash yourself on the wall. Like when I was a kid, Shmuel would come and we'd have a Shabbat meal, he'd take up all the chairs in the house, line them up in a train, and it'd be like, but I want to sit and eat. Now I sit on the floor, so I don't need chairs anymore. But like, I was a kid, I didn't understand that this is him and I have to accept. And I was just like, Mom, why is Shmuel lighting up the chairs? This is so annoying. And like, why is he lighting up all the bottles? And why is he breaking the wall? And why is he breaking my stuff? And I never understood it until I got to an age where like, he's in a different world. And for him, his lining up the chairs is his serenity. It's his order. Whereas my order is the chairs around the table. And it really, really frustrated me.
I think it was one of the things, and with a lot of, outside, guidance and advice, was some of the things, that I certainly recognize, because I approach it, Amichai, of course you can do everything. You can do anything that you want to do, and you're perfectly capable.
Right.
But there's also recognition of, like, coming from Amichai's side, well, that he might question that he's allowed to get frustrated. It's not like, don't put the cape on him. He'll get the cape because that's his personality. But the cape of, being a superhero, he has to be allowed to feel like it's okay to be frustrated. So one of the things that I've learned is to show him when I'm frustrated. I'm like, oh, that's so annoying. It's so, like, I can't believe I did that. Show him that I go through my frustrations, I go through my failures. And that's also one of the reasons why I got more into running. I played team sports my whole life, basketball and football. And a few years ago, I got more into running. And running, I started out with half marathons, now I run marathons. And I'm a completely average runner. Completely average.
But train some elite runners.
Right. Or at least I view myself as that. People have they're like,
I think you're pretty good runner.
Thanks.
Especially because you wear barefoot shoes now.
Right, exactly. I'm getting better. But one of the reasons I started doing that was really for Amichai, to show him that he sees I can physically capable of a lot of things. But running doesn't come particularly natural in terms of like, being, the best one out there. But if you just put one foot after the other, you'll get there. Now, sometimes I wonder why I had to choose like a marathon in order to like teach him that lesson. But so that he can see, it's hard. There's things that are hard for everyone. And again, it's true with every kid. You become a parent, you get to know other parents. Every kid has this challenge, and we know that from ourselves also. And it's just about recognizing that, allowing that process to play itself out. And that's one of the big lessons that I've learned, is that to show that it's not even it's to show that vulnerability, right? That you're not superhuman. We can get there by recognizing that, but you don't have to wear the cape all the time. They can see that.
The attributes that you mentioned, like being both an athlete, being a runner, being a parent, being a special needs parent or sibling, these are like the attributes that every human has to have, but we have to develop them at the highest level. So we have to have the highest level of patience, the highest level of responsibility, the highest level of accountability to ourselves, to our athletes. And I think these attributes are what make people good coaches. Like patience, understanding, realizing that everyone has their limits and their limitations, but are also capable of everything.
Yeah, that's a process too, and I think that's why, at least on our staff, it's not just me; it's the whole staff of people, because I know where people complement each other, and patience and understanding, and we each bring that to every single player in terms of how we're going to approach that. So you might see something, you might say to me, Lissie, have a little bit more patience on this. Or I might say the opposite to you, because we can see things in different ways, and I think that's always important, just to work as a team. Certainly, one thing with Amichai is that there's a team of people that work with him. I might be the head coach on that, I don't know. Or he might be the head coach and we follow. But you certainly have to work with that team.
A good CEO, you're basically the CEO of the team to an extent, like knows how to delegate tasks. So like if Bob is good at that, and Jesse, happens to your sister is Jesse, is good at that, then we like let them be them. Let them grow their talents, which applies to special needs as well.
Right.
Let them be them.
Right.
My mother did this program called Sunrise, which is a program for...
We're just getting rained on.
We're getting a little added water to the ice bath here, which is a program for like autistic people. Long story short, it was run by... it's run now... Let me start again. 2 parents who had an autistic kid. He was severely autistic. They couldn't bring him out of the spectrum, and he is now running the program.
Wow.
So using this program of Sunrise, where it's instead of trying to bring them into our world, let's go into their world to really understand what's happening. And once again, I don't think that the athletes I work with are autistic or special needs, although sometimes you do come across them. But you have to understand like the pain they're feeling, the pain they're suffering. My hip flexor hurts, my adductor hurts. I understand what it's like to be you. I play sports myself. You really want to, as a coach, best advice, instead of like being, oh, I know everything, let me just give them. It's like, I understand your pain. I feel your frustration. You have to validate your athletes in order for growth.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to jump onto a different bandwagon when you said about like, why did I choose marathons? I think because weightlifting is hard and strengthening is hard. We're working in the 5 rep range. So it's like 1, oh, this is heavy, 2, this is heavy. By the 5th rep, all right, I'm done. Whereas a marathon, like you hit that like hour and a half, 2 hour in, you hit like the runner's, what's it called, the runner wall. And it's like, you have to have a lot of mental fortitude to go through that. Squatting heavy is hard, and to break the world record, you probably need mental fortitude and a lot of other things as well. But like, it's not quite the same thing as running, especially long distance running. You're not mentally challenging yourself every step. You finish the bar, you finish the rep, you put it back in the squat rack, and you get to rest for 3 minutes.
Right.
So it's like a total different level of mental toughness.
Right. It's a continuous cycle, right? Like when you're lifting, or when you're in a game, right, and you're on the court, and okay, the quarter is over in 2 minutes. I can get my break, right? I just got to give 2 minutes more. Or in football, like if you're on the defensive side of thing, okay, it's the I've got 2 more downs to go. We can do this, or 1 more down, whatever. In the marathon running, it's finding your pace and getting there. And we all always say this, as coaches and players, right? Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? We're sitting here right now.
Oh hell yeah.
But with running, there's never been anything truer, that you're gonna get, it's gonna hurt at a certain point. You're gonna train and you do the right training, but at a certain point when you get to kilometer or whatever. I always feel like, when you get to like 30, 31, 32, it's just like, oh my God. Because you've got like, you're there, but you're not there yet. And I work with a runner who's an elite runner, and it's the same for her. And if you talk to any runner, it doesn't matter how quickly you're doing it. At some point, you're going to experience that pain, and it's about mentally, working through it, finding, whatever it is that you need to tell yourself, whatever mantra, whatever state that you need to put yourself in to get through that. And it's certainly challenging. And then, when you finish it, you're like, oh, I'm done. I'm not doing that again. And then
You do it next week.
Again. Yeah.
It's kind of like drinking. Like you get drunk and you're like, I'm never doing that. And the next week you drink again.
Like, except for tequila. Tequila, you just put it away.
Different ball game. I personally have a little bit of a unique twist on mental like toughness. That when you spoke about hitting that like 30-kilometer mark, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. I think mental toughness or mental capacity is what your physical the maximum abilities of your physical capacity. So people get confused, especially I work with tactical a lot, and all the national teams that I work with. So they kind of like, oh, mentally tough, let me run that 10 sprint as fast as I could. If they're not strong, they're not going to be able to. So if this is the meter and they're this strong, mentally tough is just maxing out that physical meter. If this is their physical strength meter, then maxing that out. So like the mindset is actually not just, I'm going to run a marathon because I want to be mentally strong. No, train for a marathon.
It's a training.
Train, be strong, be resilient, be mobile, be stable, have a good base of aerobic capacity and endurance, and then you'll be able to run. And then by the 30th kilometer, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Right.
Like, why do I want to run a marathon? So if you have the training and you have the why, the mental is pretty easy. That's what I found.
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to get to the place where you're probably cursing yourself.
Yeah.
But I think part of the mental preparation confidence is that I've done the training, I put in the work, and that applies to everything, not just in sports. Is that when you're whether it's academically or professionally or whatever it is that you're doing, if you put in the work, right, win, lose or draw, you can go in there confidently and say, I've done my job. I've done it. Before you start, we'll talk about this also with our team. Before we start that tournament, we've already done the work. The work's there. Before you step across that line in the marathon to start it, hopefully you've done what you needed to do to prepare. So that should help you mentally. So when you hit that wall, you can, you rely on your body. There's muscle memory that takes over, and you just go. And again, it's that combination. But I certainly agree that it's the full picture. It's not just saying, well, I'm tough, I can do it.
Yeah, I see it so prevalent in the Army world. Like all their training sessions will be like sprints and stretchers and crawling. What about teach them how to crawl? What about actually build up their speed, strength, and power, like all the things we do as coaches? Another aspect is really confidence. Now, when you get to the field and you just spend 8 months training on the field, in the gym, sprinting, football skills, you come to the field like, I understand what to do. When there's two people on the left side of the field, the receivers, I know how to like communicate with the man or woman in front of me. And that confidence builds your mental capacity. Whereas if you don't train and don't know what to do, then you're not going to be ready. Now, it could be a placebo effect. It could be because I just trained for 8 months, so now I have confidence in myself, but I didn't actually get better. But I don't think it is. I think it's that when you hit the field knowing I just spent months or years of training to get to where I am, you're just like, you're fired up and ready to roll, regardless of whether you're stronger or not.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I think the concept of confidence, it takes a long time to work on, and it's always a process. I actually just listened to a podcast. It's with a Paralympic wheelchair basketball player.
We'll have to get him in the podcast.
Yeah.
In the Cold Feet podcast.
Well, it's a her. And she was specifically talking about confidence, and not only confidence in her own play, but confidence in who she is, in her body, and what she's gone through. And it's just a process. It's a process every day in your life of building that. So and a collective, collecting experiences. So whether, again, that's on the field and you come to that situation, you're like, okay, I'm fired up, I'm ready to go because I know I did the work. Well, you didn't just do the work this season. You did the work the season before. You did it in every experience that you've had that gets you out there where you're saying, so if it's a situation where you're looking at, okay, well, I'm a defensive corner, I'm playing strong side. You know how you're going to react. You also know how to react when things break down. Because it's just, your reaction is based off of your collective experiences, and that should build confidence as well. But it's certainly a process. And you have your bad days, right? You have your bad days where you're just, you're just like, this is not working today. It's not working today for me.
It's kind of additive. I have a sign here in the gym. I think it's by Michael Jordan, and he said, "I failed over and over again, and that is why I succeed."
Yeah.
So it's like every experience you have on the field, even the missed tackles or the missed flagpoles or the missed balls or the falling down in the marathon and not breaking the finish line.
Right.
Those are experiences. Those things add to your journey of growth, and they're not really failures. They're actually wins.
Right.
Because
and that's the point, right? We look at failure as we fail, but it's
a bad
not.
thing. It's an amazing thing.
It's because you learn your capabilities of being able. Okay, now I can get back up. And that doesn't mean you're going to win every single time just because you got yourself back up. But it means that you can. That is an experience that you can rely on. I know how to get back up. And I think, again, that's something that I always try to impart to Amichai. And, even if he physically falls down, Amichai, get back up.
Failure is awesome. It really is. As long as it's a learning experience and you don't let it get to your head, because if you let it get to your head, then it's only going to bring you down.
Right.
If you let it grow you, it's only going to bring you up.
Right.
I want to dive a little bit into, you played for Team Israel for many years, and you also coach for Team Israel. Could you just share with us a little bit of both experiences? What's it like to play for a country, specifically the Jewish homeland? You know what I mean?
So, I was a player on the national team for many years. I was a defensive cornerback.
By the way, flag football, in case we didn't...
Flag football. I played sports my entire life growing up in America. I played mainly basketball. I played basketball at a pretty high level, and when I came here, we were introduced to the sport, and the national team was just in its beginning stages, and we started playing and competing, and that was great to be able to compete for a country that you came to live in and represent that country. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to walk out into international competition and feel that that you want to give everything you can because you're proud of the country that you're representing. And it's something that I've always looked at, and my teammates have always looked at as an absolute privilege. And that's something now, as I've gotten onto the coaching side, that I very much want to and would feel would be a big failure on my part if our players didn't recognize
learning experience though,
right? Learning how much a privilege it is to play a sport at its highest level and represent your country
and wear that flag on your shirt.
Wearing the flag on the shirt, it's literally putting it on your sleeve.
And
I think that and when you talk about going out on the field and your adrenaline's pumping, it's that's what you're doing.
There's no better feeling than playing in an international tournament. You can tell this better than me. Presenting Israel. We're not just representing Uganda or America. We're representing a country full of Holocaust survivors. We came straight from Europe, and not trying to get it all like a dark episode, but we were almost exterminated 70 years ago. And now we're playing sports
in those countries
against Germany. Against Germany. We're playing sports, tackle football in Turkey against anti-Semitic countries who are not our friends. And you're representing Israel as opposed to just representing there's other countries out there. But the pride that a Jew or an Israeli has, both in the military world, by the way, and in sports, it's unbeatable. We're fighting for our country. We're not going to Afghanistan. Oh, it's a touchy subject. We're not going to Afghanistan to fight for the U.S. We're fighting for Israel, in Israel.
And I think, that's certainly been, the teams I played on. You just feel that energy, coming, straight through. And certainly to go to countries that historically haven't always been kind to us, and experience that and represent Israel is a huge, again, you just feel the fire under you. I will say, just to show, that we have progressed. Those countries are countries that are reaching out to us, and they show the utmost sportsmanship and respect. So again, you're being able to really get to so many different important levels, not only through sports, and that's amazing. And that's also there are so many things you can experience through sports and teach through sports, and that's certainly within that context is valid and legitimate in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that point regarding that. I would say that they're realizing that we've all made mistakes in the past. All countries have made mistakes, and we have to grow and move on from our failures. So I think that sports' main objective is not the gold medal or not even the fun. It's actually community. It's growth. It's national level growth. It's international growth. It's especially team sports. It's about bringing people together and adopting that athlete mindset of growth together, and that's for me the reason why I play sports. It keeps me alive, connecting to other human beings around the world, different backgrounds, different capabilities, especially in the football world where someone could be a great rusher and not know how to catch a ball, and other people could throw a ball and not know how to play defense, or in our world. But everyone can have different talents and attributes, but still be best friends and still grow as a team.
Yeah, and not only, just to expand that, just what we were talking about before, people of all different capabilities, people who, again, who, wherever they fall on the scale of, I don't even know what normal is anymore, whatever, right? Because it doesn't, for me, it doesn't, when people say, well, a normal child, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
we
know
don't
what
get to
normal is.
define normal anymore.
But sports certainly has that ability to bring everyone together, and that's what we
Absolutely.
also see again with this week and next week with the Paralympics. People of tremendous capability, and unfortunately, it doesn't get the hype that the Olympics get. But if we can concentrate on what we can accomplish through sport with everyone. I think there are tremendous lessons to be learned there, and understanding how do we include, how do we accept, and that is ultimately, my greatest hope for Amichai is that that's the world that he's going to live in, where it's inclusive and accepting, and seeing people for their strengths and their capabilities, and that's what's that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, or it's constantly being thrown at me that we all know they're all there. We know that these aren't new lessons that we know.
The things that these people are capable of is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
try to play basketball in a wheelchair and see how it goes.
Yeah, you're shooting from the basket's the same height, but you're down here and you're just launching it up there.
There's playing basketball in wheelchairs. There's, if you've ever seen the Paralympics of swimming, there's
Swimming.
literally like limbs floating around the pool. There's like an arm, a fake leg because they don't wear the
Well, they
limbs,
don't
a
have
lot
their
of them.
prosthetics, yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
these people are, I wouldn't say that they're better than us, 'cause we're just all human beings, but they're capable of so much more. The fact that they could compete at a Olympic level, missing their limbs or not able to walk, and they're still competing at the highest level, and we have to be grateful for what we have. We have 4 limbs and we're functioning. Thank the
Right.
Lord.
It's recognizing, one, what you have, and two, that doesn't mean that it's perfect, right? Perfect comes in so many different forms.
Right.
And because and I think, the founder of the Olympics was actually this guy. He was a doctor, Ludwig Gutmann. He fled Germany. He was a Jewish guy.
Of course.
He fled Germany and he was a neurologist, and his basic concept was, well, everyone is capable, and rehab through sport is going to give people who have suffered injury and spinal injury and have had catastrophic changes in their life, allow them to feel capable again. And I think that's the idea of just looking at what people's capabilities are, and we can't even imagine that. So it's, being grateful for what you have, but also understanding that perfection comes in so many different forms, and it's not always,
One
it
fits
can't
all,
be,
yeah.
because you walk in a certain way that, who cares? It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It matters what you do with those the capabilities that you have, not what is perceived as missing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a powerful lesson that we can learn from the sports world where you're accepted for who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're good at, what you're bad at. We find your place in
Find
the
your
field
place.
and you do it.
Yeah.
For the last topic for today, because you're a runner, but you also have a high love and respect for strength training, I'm sure that's something we've spoken about a lot. Could you just put it out there for all the runners out there? How do you connect running to strength training? Why it is important? Why maybe it's not important? I've bumped across people who are what's called purist runners, where all they do is run and they do nothing else, no running work, no technique, no strength work. And if that works for them, be my guest, go for it. But I, as a strength coach, do believe that it's important. And
Strength
it
training
away.
is important.
Yeah.
Strength training is important for any sport that you're going to do or any activity that you're going to do. And running is no different. We have to work on our form. We have to work on the parts of our body that are going, like you said, like we were talking about before, when we're about to hit that wall, we have to rely that our body's strong. The problem what comes, I think, with a lot of runners and endurance sports is that the goal is just to get the run in. The training session for that day is, okay, I'm out running, 25 kilometers. So then you're running 4 times a week or 5 times a week or whatever it is. When you get to an elite level, so you're saying, where do I fit in the strength training? It doesn't have to be every day, all day. It's a half hour, twice a week, something like that. But it's a very specific program working on the very specific, functional training of your sport, and that's going to make you stronger. And I've not only personally seen that, but other athletes and runners that I've worked with, they see a difference in their running and they see a difference in their results. And that's true across the board, and running is no different. So that's certainly my plug for strength training when it comes to running. And like every sport, you build your program and focus on, the motions of that sport to make you better. That's where your training comes in, the functional training.
I'm part of this international community of barefoot runners, actually, and a lot of them coming forward with like knee pain and ankle pain and hip pain. And we have to understand that even though running is an endurance sport, or strength training is a strength sport, literally the definition of strength training, we're talking about sports or sets that last anywhere between 10 to 30 seconds, whereas running can last hours and end of their repetitive motion. Strength is the base of everything, meaning the stronger I am, the more potential I have to be a better runner. It doesn't mean that if I'm this strong power lifter, I'll suddenly be a good runner.
Right.
It means that if I have a strong hips and knees and ankles and quads and hamstrings and calves and everything's working in play, I can be better at running, especially because running is not linear. You're not just running the same pattern. You're going uphill and you're going downhill.
And I think that's one of the big things that people don't recognize about running. They see it just as linear,
right?
But it's not. And therefore, the strength training becomes even more important to understand how your body where it needs to get stronger. Because you're not just running.
It's not a stationary bike, and even cyclists can benefit.
It's not.
Right? The two main ways I look at strength training for runners is what we spoke about, the obstacles, uphills, downhills, rocks and terrain in the floor, quickly changing direction if you're avoiding a runner. That's where like ankle sprains happen. Is that going uphill is strength training. If you look at it as part of the 3-hour run, yes, it's endurance training. But the load on your body, the way gravity works, there's like 300 more force on your body, and that's where those lunges, that's where the squats come in. That's literally where you're come first in that uphill sprint. And the second part of it is that because running is not a full range of motion, it's not a sprint, what happens is that certain body parts tend to get overused. The hamstrings, the calves, the quads, it's like runner's knee and hip and ankles are always iffy. You actually have to increase your range of motion and not just mobilize it, but actually strengthen the entire capacity of your body. So when you do run, instead of it relying solely on one joint, which is already abused, like the hamstrings and the knees, the things we commonly see in runners, also in our athletes as well, but rather by looking at the whole body as an efficient machine, that everything's strong and that everything can work smoothly, even the weakest part. So runners out there, please make sure to strength train. A marathoner says it, ultra elite marathoners say it, and don't say like, I'm not going to squat because I run, because two different things. Two different aspects. You can ask.
And you're not lifting for power.
Right.
Meaning you're lifting for your sport.
Right. You're not trying to break the world record in squats. You're actually just trying to squat in order to run more efficiently. Sorry. So you will be running like 3 to 5 times a week, depending on your regimen. And the strength training can be 2-3 times a week. Like it doesn't have to be crazy. People tend to like get confused. It's strength training to assist your running, not strength training for the sake of strength training.
Absolutely.
And we
that's
see
like that for any sport.
Right. And we see it on the field also. We work in addition to the gym that the girls are doing, 3-4 times a week. They're also half of our session is running technique. Think about it. Right. A lot of sprint technique, because if you perfect your technique when you actually sprint in the game, everything falls into place. So there's so much elements. I saw a picture of Usain Bolt the other day, who trains 4 years to improve his run by 1 millisecond. How like same drills we do, sprint technique, weighted sprint technique, just really understanding how to get his body strong before actually setting out for that run. Before we wrap up, so we're about 40 minutes in the ice bath. It hit around 15 degrees now because our body heat warmed it up a bit. How you feeling?
Feet are a little cold.
Yeah, we'll go all the way to the neck in because Jesse gave us a big deal about that. So you're gonna get your head in as well. See, it's the sister thing. They don't like those thingies. Anything else you want to add to our audience before we wrap up for the day?
No, it was definitely a privilege and pleasure to come here. I'm shaking a little bit, and I'm happy to come back, talk about anything. And certainly the message that I think we talked about today is just believe in your capabilities, and everyone has their capabilities.
Yes, sir. What's our breakdown? What is it? El Yisrael. How does it go?
Yeah, and then
As El Yisrael. Yeah, and now we go all the way in. Ready? 3.
Oh, Jesse, I hate you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. You can find the rest of our content on our YouTube channel at Sean Fit for Life, right here. You can follow us on Instagram, right here, and you can comment and tell us your thoughts below.